Today's episode is all about happiness. When we talk about our children and their opportunity to thrive, we often express our desire to have them be happy with whatever they choose. For ourselves, we want our day to be a happy one, full of beautiful connections, feeling loved, feeling connected, and enjoyment in what we're doing. Let's look at a few statistics about happiness from the studies exploring what it truly means to be happy. When we're achieving or experiencing happiness, our heart rate actually lowers, our blood pressure can drop, and even our heart rate can slow and then stabilize. The idea of positive psychology is to explore what it means for mental health and well-being, and if happiness is something achieved or achievable. Since the pandemic, we know that to be resistant to germs and illness, happiness can create a barrier for illness. And it keeps people from getting into that sick realm just by the idea of how they approach life. And those who lead stress-filled lives can protect themselves by reducing their level of stress and instigating habits and thoughts that reduce stress and help their body experience the release. Digging a little bit more into the science, aches, pains, dizziness, muscle strain, heartburn, mobility, the immune system, everything is linked to your level of happiness. And it also is linked to the stress hormones that run through us. We recognize that happy people often have a glow about them. They wear bright colors or accessories, and they're fun to be around. They're really just contagious. Our guest today, Angela O'Brien, has based her wellness business around the idea of happiness. In fact, she calls her business Do Life Happy. As you are reflecting on the role that happiness plays in your life and the approach you take to connecting with yourself and others in a happy way, are you choosing to be happy? How did Angela come into the business of happiness? After 25 years in quality management in the medical device industry and two major breakdowns within a 10-year period, Angela, incapacitated and questioning life, began a journey of self-discovery and healing. And that eventually led her to the spirituality and profound sense of connection. Now committed to helping others find that same sense of connection and calm, Angela encourages individuals to identify and express their true selves and helps them reconnect to their inner world, to recognize their thoughts and emotions, and recalibrate when necessary to reclaim and regain control of their lives. Angela's work has allowed her to rediscover her own creativity. We can dive into that today. And she works with entrepreneurs to create engaging, one-of-a-kind workshops that align with their values and goals. These workshops not only provide an authentic and enjoyable experience for participants, but also help entrepreneurs to attract genuinely interested and invested individuals into their programs. You're listening to Be Well with Dr. Michelle Greenwell, sponsored by the Cape Breton Tea Company and Dance Debut Inc. And please welcome our Be Happy person, Angela O'Brien. Welcome, Angela.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So before we begin our conversation, I want to get the intention set for our listeners. So I have pulled a card from the Affirmations for the Body and Biofield deck. So I'm just holding it up for those people that are on the visual rather than a podcast listening in. And so the cover is black and it has, it's called Baby and Child actually is the ribbon that kind of appears on the front. And I've chosen a card from the Meeting the Divine deck, which is part of Lower Dantian. And I'm going to just hold that one up. So this one's got, it looks like a ray of yellow that's going out. And then it's got like a horseshoe of orange. It's got blues and greens and a tiny, tiny little bit of purple in it and some green. And so with Lower Dantian, this is a place where we store and build energy. And when we move, open and close in the hip area and below the belly button, then that's where we have the opportunity to make energy that we can use through the day, which leads to happiness. And the affirmation that goes with this one is, all your core essence to flow and permeate your being. Allow your core essence to flow and permeate your being. Fill up on the magical elixir that is you. Let it flow to every cell of your being and realign with the beauty of you. I thought that was pretty fitting um, for a
Very
happiness conversation. And all I
definitely.
did was I cut the deck too. I said, here's what we need for today, and I cut the deck. Okay.
Wow.
So if anybody's interested in more about the deck, you can find that on dancedebut.com. And from here, we're going to add tea in. So Angela, you and I talked about tea before. Do you want to share what
Mhm.
you've brought today?
I have I didn't, I said I had it, but I have it over here. I'm actually drinking vanilla chamomile today.
Vanilla chamomile. Oh, that's interesting. Lovely. Okay, and what kind of mug did you choose?
I'll show you. I have uh, oh my goodness, I just dropped. I want to get a napkin so that I don't. It is one that my children gave me.
Oh my goodness. Give peeps a
Give
chance?
peeps a chance as opposed to give peace a chance. Um, I love peeps. I don't eat them anymore, but so it's a big deal around my house. I get peeps on every occasion, and if you recall, they used to only make peeps at Easter, and now there are peeps um, every holiday, so they don't hold as much. Um,
So now as a Canadian, I don't know what peeps are.
it
So
is a marshmallow. It's complete sugar. It's a marshmallow bunny or chick or whatever dipped in colored sugar. So pure sweet,
pure sugar.
pure
Oh, I
sugar.
love it.
So
Oh, the mug is so cute. It has a little blue bunny on it. Yeah, I love it. That even like, and it's a big round mug, right? So holding
yes,
that is, yeah, is joyful. Yeah,
and it's warm.
yeah. So just to give the hands that sense.
Yeah.
Um, and I know for lots of people listening, they probably wonder why I make such a big deal out of tea. And yes, I've got the Cape Breton Tea Company, but it's what you do in ritual and preparation for the tea. You know, even the selection of which tea are you going to drink. And we have teas with intention in our company, and we have teas that are just for regular everyday consumption, which, you know, when you go to the cupboard, it's like, well, what do I feel like today? But we're hoping that by bringing that into the conversation in the podcast, that people, instead of rushing to listen to a podcast because it's, you know, the busy thing to do while they're doing other things, to actually stop and think for a moment, could I take this time to de-stress, have a cup of tea, and carry on? So as I, you know, as we talk about which mug do you put it in, people have favorites, and they have, you know, what makes them feel good.
Mhm. Most definitely, I have my favorites, and they tend to be ones that are this shape and round and uh, almost always something that I have some sentimental value. So
Exactly. Exactly. And we go to get the glass out of the cupboard to, you know, have a drink of water, say. You don't reflect on the glass the same way that you do the mug. There's something different about it.
to me, the reflection, your mug is a reflection of you, more so than the glass of water that you choose
Hmm.
or the glass that you're going to choose for your water. I don't know, but it is different. I do believe it is different.
Yeah. So from the Tea with Intention series, I chose awesome today because I was thinking about the happiness, and I was thinking about the joy and the way that you approach everything. And ultimately the expression that comes out is, that's just awesome. So I thought, well,
Yeah.
I'm going to pull that out. And this one has chamomile in it as well, but it's got lavender, peppermint, rose petals, ginger, rose hip, lemon balm, and it's the base in it is rooibos. So I call it the combination of what you'd pull out of your garden. You know, if you went around to all the herbs in
Mhm.
the garden, what you would find. And the other piece for this one is because it's part of the intention series, that's part of the 5 elements. And we've got central and governing meridian. And that one has an infinity loop, that energy line that runs through the center core of the body. So I just wanted to bring that idea in there because hugs kind of have that same effect. And then also the way we approach love and the passion we have for life, that creates that kind of infinity loop in our relationships. And I put it in my PEI mug, and I'm just holding that up for those that are listening to the podcast, which starts out with some orange at the top and some blue and green, but this has PEI dirt in it. And I fell in love with the red dirt of PEI when I was a kid. And so it's fun to be able to know that I've got that on the side of the mug. And I know where you are, you're in Texas, so
correct.
you don't have red dirt in Texas, but in PEI and here on Cape Breton Island, we also have red dirt. And yeah, it's for me coming from the West where we had black dirt, it was so interesting to see the red and the vibrancy of the color that came out. Okay, so now we're totally sidetracked.
No worries.
Oh, let's start with, well, first of all, let's do a cheer. So thank you so much for coming on to the show and to sharing your story because it's a very important one. Thank you so much, Angela.
Thank you. As I took my drink before.
Just an everyday part of life, right? Okay, so if you would tell us about what was your incentive to shift from the corporate and science world over into the wellness industry, and tell me about some of the rigors maybe that were in the professional life that you had, and then that moment when you said, I have to make a change. I'm just curious how you brought that out.
I had spent, like you mentioned, it's been about 25 years in the medical device industry and climbing the ladder constantly and moving around. The company moved me all over the place. But it was very stressful. I worked in quality management. And towards the latter part of my career, I was responsible for the quality of the product that left the building. And these are class 3 implantable devices. So it's not a Band-Aid or a toothbrush, actually something that's going into someone's body. And that's just, and there's some aspects of my personality. I'm a workaholic. I work a lot. It requires a lot of work. It's a very highly regulated industry. You have to dot your I's, cross your T's. And they just kept piling plants on facilities onto me. And from the outside, it was like I had the perfect life. Nice house, family, children, pool. We entertained every weekend, but I was unhappy. It was empty. The work didn't fulfill me. But at the time I didn't know what it was. And everything became overwhelming. And I think my body I like to say this was the universe slapping me upside the head. I shut down completely and had a breakdown, a complete breakdown. And my self-worth was totally tied to my career. It's who I was. It was what defined me. And those achievements of climbing so high so quickly, but that came at a cost. But because my self I was so tied up in my job, I couldn't tell people when I was home on disability. I couldn't bring myself to say, well, I'm at home on disability. I couldn't even bring myself to say I'm a stay-at-home mom.
Mm.
I couldn't, that didn't work. I had to say, I'm on sabbatical. Because of this, I went back to work too soon before I was
Mm-hmm.
ready. And it happened again. When I went back to work, I went same industry, but instead of being in the facilities manufacturing, I was auditing the quality organizations and my background's in microbiology. So I was auditing the sterilization methods for other medical device manufacturers to allow them to sell their products in the EU. And it was travel. So I would leave on Monday and come back on Friday. If I was going somewhere that like Brazil was my territory, for example, I would go for 2 weeks at a time. Perks, yes, I could take my family. We had lots of vacations, but I saw a lot of hotel rooms and airports. And it got to the point where on Sunday nights, I would cry because I dreaded going to work. And for every audit you do, you have to write a report.
Mm-hmm.
And I would wait until the weekend to write those reports. And so there was no me time. Then the same thing happened again. I started to feel overwhelmed. But this second time, I started to get physical symptoms, pain. My migraines got worse. My whole body hurt. And this knocked me out completely. And I'm making this very long.
No, it's really interesting what happens, and you're so wrapped up in it, and trying to get out is very difficult. And I think for people to realize your story is not an exclusive story. There's many people have the same kinds of things but don't know how to get out. So I'm fascinated, especially when you go back too soon, because that's also what driven people will do. And then, then what does happen when you have a second relapse. So yes.
Exactly. And 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 it caused lots of problems each time. Um, the second time, I mentioned that it was like the universe hitting me upside the head the first time. The second time, I like to say it was the universe just with 2x4, just knocking me out, right? And it did. I was completely incapacitated. I didn't get out of bed for months. And I had already had, by this time, more ECTs than I could count, been hospitalized multiple times, been on every uh, drug I think known to man that might possibly help. TMS, which is magnetic stimulation of the brain, ketamine, I mean, you name it, and I had done it, and nothing was helping. And I I didn't want to be here any longer.
Mm-hmm.
There was nothing to live for. But it happens that and I had nothing to look to because I was a non-believer. I'm a scientist at heart, And I was, no, there's no evidence. There's nothing out there. No, show me some evidence and I might believe. Well, while I'm, lounging around in the bed because I can't, and to get me to take a shower or do any, I just want to stress how incapacitating major depressive disorder can be. And it's not something where you can just say, oh, we'll feel better, or you don't have anything to be unhappy about, right? So I had tried all this and I was at my wits' end. And around this time, my dad became really ill. He had prostate cancer that went into his bones. And I was taking care of him. And I was watching Tyler Henry, who is a medium. And somehow he was interviewing, he did something for someone, and it opened my mind. I thought there's no way he could know this stuff. And it just opened my mind to a different. And I thought, So I started to look into that, just the whole spiritual realm. And that's ultimately what helped me, was hitting that bottom where I had to find something to live for, and finding out that there was something to live for. I had just had my eyes closed to it all the time. And I started to do all the things that they tell you to do. So when you're starting out in this, I had never meditated. I had never done anything like this. I had journaled, but never journaled. Every time you go into a behavioral health facility, they give you a journal. It's just like standard. Here's your scrubs and your journal. But I never used it. But I found my journal. And what I discovered was that I had no idea who I was, or what I wanted. So that process of self-discovery became vital. And once I was able to kind of pick myself up off the ground, out of this deep hole, it was through journaling. It was through spiritual practice. And when you start something new, you really want to go all in. And personality tests, I have to get some water. My tea is almost gone and my mouth is getting very dry. You go head on, and I wanted to do it all. It's that driven part of me, right? I wasn't working, but it took a while because I didn't feel really well at first. And let me see if I can pour some water. Let's have a little watered down tea. I think that'll be okay. So what was I saying? My father passed. And so between myself not wanting to be on the planet, seeing my dad pass, I started to think about my own mortality. And I'm doing all the self-development work to try to help myself. And I linked the two, and I had an experience that kind of changed my life and led me down the spiritual. It wasn't just a dip. My toe wasn't just in there. I was here for good. And I I started to feel better. My pain level was lower. I had fewer migraines, and I wasn't. I could get out. I wanted to get out of bed,
Wow.
uh, which had it was my whole perspective on life changed. And with that came this desire to live and help others do the same, because what I had found was I was just doing what I was taught to do, which was there was never any question, right? Go to college, get a good job, get married, buy a house, have children. I checked all those boxes and I still wasn't happy, but I didn't realize I had a choice.
Mm-hmm.
Never had I been taught that I could choose, that I didn't have to go down that route.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a part of that self-discovery process. Well, if I don't have to do that, who am I and what is important to me, and what do I want to do? And that was like, hitting Fort Knox, and I wanted to share it with everyone. And I just started um, making videos and sharing little parts of my story.
So do you have that on YouTube? Is that how you were
No,
sharing?
I have a Facebook page where I was sharing it,
Mm-hmm.
and um, uh, a group. I had a group where I put the videos, um,
Perfect.
and it was very cathartic to get it out and to be able to help others with my story. And because journaling had such a big piece of what I was doing, that's kind of where I started. If journaling, I'd always been a planner. I always had planners. I did bullet journaling, I did little stickers. I may have journaled what I did during the day, like a dear diary, but I discovered that journaling is so much more, and you can get in touch your with who you are. And I had lost myself somewhere climbing the ladder,
Mm-hmm.
and I it wasn't fulfilling, but I was on autopilot, so I was just doing what I thought I needed to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until I was forced to slow down, and look at my life and the choices that I had made. And before my breakdown, if you would have said, "What are your values?" I would be like, "What are values?" I had no idea. What do you want out of life? I don't know. And these are huge questions that drive drive the decisions that you make. And if you don't know who you are, the decisions that you make, or the choices, may not be in alignment with you, and you're going to be unhappy, which is what I discovered.
Mm-hmm.
Until you know what it is, who you really are, and what you want, your needs and your values, until you meet those, you won't be happy.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Wow. Such a journey to, because I take it this went over, um, wasn't a short period of time. This was a long period of time. So that walk out it was a long walk when you finally got off the bed, right? Because you have to get off the bed
Oh,
first and then,
e-
you know, pick yourself up from there. Yeah.
exactly. And
Wow.
so much had happened in there. I also lost my mom during this time. And so I had just been dealing a lot and being able to, to, and I started to see it as more of a learning experience.
Hmm.
It taught me so much, not only about myself, um, but just the world, life, and in general. Like I said, I don't. I see the world completely differently. You know.
Wow. Um, okay, so when you felt that draining, especially the second time too, when you already recognize the signals and they're on their way again, and you felt that, um, what's the thought process as that's coming towards you? What was in your mind there?
Oh. um, I recognized it,
Mhm.
but again, because of I can push my way through it. I just need to work harder. I just need to, and that's one of the problems. I like to say that we're conditioned to, if we just work harder, push through, do more, um we're only valued for what we can produce.
Mhm.
We don't value being, we value doing. Um whereas if I was paying attention to some of the being, the doing would have become more a lot easier.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, and that's exactly what happened. So I was working from home right as I was traveling. So I didn't have an office home base. And so at first it was, well, let's just cut back on your travel and you can do remote audits, or what they call dossier reviews. When a company wants to introduce a new medical device, they similar to a notified body is similar to the FDA, and they have to send all their technical documentation to notified body for review. So you just do that review and you don't have to travel so much. But when it got to I couldn't even do that. Um but the signs were there, and my family knew and kind of got help right away. Or let me say tried to get help, because it didn't help, um unfortunately.
Mhm. Yeah. Um, okay, so I'm just thinking about those people listening who
Mm-hmm.
probably I'd be one of them because it was, if you my grandfather would say, if you couldn't dig a ditch, you weren't worth anything. And
Mm-hmm.
they worked on their orchard, you know, late at night, changing sprinklers first thing in the morning, um, nap in the middle of the day, but go, 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 go. And so that's
Yeah.
what we observed. And my parents were both entrepreneurs, had their own businesses. If you didn't work, you didn't get paid. So you just keep going. And pandemic hits, you have nothing else to do. So you might as well work because
Mm-hmm.
there really isn't anything else. And many people are now outside of that pandemic and life for them may be normal. But we live in a rural area. So for me, life is real, still kind of the same. We don't get
Mm-hmm.
out that often because there isn't anything to do. So what do? You keep working.
Right.
Um, and we just have this societal way about everything that that pushes you in that direction, and then being able to recognize. but to recognize earlier how to get out, you know,
E-
and what are your
ex-
tools?
exactly, because your body is talking to you all the time, and but you ignore,
Hmm.
right? Because that conditioning is so much stronger. Do as opposed to just sit still and listen, because your body is trying to tell you, hello, you can't continue to do this.
Yeah.
um it,
And
definitely.
I'm fascinated too because, I've had lots of conversations over the last few weeks where the mind is, the be all and end all. It controls how the body works, it controls how things happen, you control your thoughts, you have your conscious reasoning. And really, what happens is no, your body is signaling you, telling you all of the pieces. It has a language, but we
Hmm.
just have forgotten the language. We've forgotten how to recognize or listen to it. Um, and our mind then is in that overdrive, but it's just reacting to what the body is stressed about. And
Exactly.
and our decisions aren't good ones, and our activities aren't good, good choices always. Um, yeah, it's fascinating how much.
Because we basically create our own overwhelm,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? And I'm I can see that now, but of course I could, hindsight's always 2020. um
Right.
but if you do start just to pay attention and check in, I have a really good example of a recent, um I was doing a lot of work for a lot of different people, and I started to feel overwhelmed with all the work. And it took me right back to where so that's what I was thinking, oh my goodness, this is happening. I'm freaking out. And I had my luck, thankfully, I had my tools and I was able to use it. But that's a different situation where now I have tools to handle those feelings when they come up differently. I could let that overwhelm, or those tasks, I could let it take me down, or I could, Angela, these are just thoughts. This is just, let's step back. What's more important? What has to be done? Um, as opposed to the whole world is going to fall apart. And I didn't want to let anybody down.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And that's back to that self-worth again. Is it on the outside or is it on the inside? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I was going to ask you about strength. Um, what gave you the strength to make the choice to do something different? But I think what you've expressed is better than that, because it's not strength, because we have the strength. We have the strength to continue to drive forward, but it's actually the courage to not push the strength, but to actually step back from it. And then the second part is the tools, how you filled the wellness toolbox. And so where you didn't have that, so you relied on strength to carry you, then, and that's that whole try to do too much piece. Um,
Mm-hmm.
back to strategically building your business, so that, or working in the professional world where you have the tools in place to, yes, to do the job, but you were already trained for the job. So it's really about having the tools to live a good life in the job.
Right.
Yeah.
It's um and we all say, well, I'm we're all looking for happiness, right? And I was definitely unhappy. And when I found happiness, even though, it doesn't, it's not something that's you feel every single day or whatever. I wanted to share that. with everyone, because there are tools that you can use to help. And going back to that strength, it's, first of all, you have to want to get better. Um, and willpower alone isn't
That's that strength piece again. Yeah,
isn't going to get you there.
it's effort. Yeah.
It, it, right. And some allowance and some compassion, and just, it's okay. The universe has my back, which was the missing part in my life, is I didn't have that.
Yeah, when you're out there driving to do those achievements, to climb the ladder, universe really doesn't play a role. It's that's a linear corporate piece,
Yep.
and it's a completely different way of thinking about things when you step back and see, where should I be going? How should I be getting there? What are the gifts that keep popping in on that journey, because I'm not so tunnel vision focused. Yeah.
Exactly. When you it's different when you're forced, but you don't have to be in a situation where you're forced to slow down. Don't let it get to that point. Because if you just slow down and pay attention and learn to become present now, and see what a gift, see the beauty, pay attention to those things that I took for granted. And
So
gratitude plays a huge part in that.
yeah, yeah. And I know the science of gratitude, how you live your life every day, when you place it within the day, and how you finish your day with gratitude completely transforms. And that's where
Yeah.
that happiness quotient can go up, because you bring that peace in. And you do have the courage to let go of those old patterns that may have served those years, the generations ahead of us. But in our
Right.
day and age, where we are really working hard all the time, we already are doing that. So we don't need a reminder to do more. We need a reminder to figure out how to live. Yeah.
Exactly. And in my work, what I was finding was other women that were going through the exact thing. I'm pulled here, I'm pulled there. I don't have time to do this, that, or the other. And that's just what society is. But you there are tools, and we don't put enough focus on taking care of ourselves.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay, so out of all of this, your gift um, is your business. And do you want to talk a little bit about how that business grew out of your discoveries, and how it's refined in its message over the last few years? So just talking a little bit about that.
Well, I started because I wanted to share these tools with other women. I started Do Life Happy, where I was just sharing tools and positivity and the things that I had learned, and run courses began one-on-one coaching, and then courses around journaling, discovering yourself, because like I said, that's what I was finding out, that women felt lost and they didn't know where, just like I did, what's most important to me, um, what what's aligned. People keep hearing this word alignment. Well, what does it mean to be aligned uh, to my values? If I have no idea what my values are, so that's how I started, uh, helping women on self-discovery journeys, and then I with it one-on-one and with the course and through journaling, discovering themselves and how they can clear their mind and determine what's important and see the stories and the patterns that are taking place that they didn't even realize, that are causing them to repeat the same behavior over and over. All the things that I had realized, and learned, I wanted to share. But in the process of, I had to learn how to do that. I had to learn how to run a business.
Mm-hmm.
And doing that and doing things for my business, I learned the creative side, Canva, for example. I love to play on Canva. And I, of course, joined Mastermind and have taken lots of business courses. Well, through that process, I've learned quite a bit and found that I I can help others with that as well. That same self-discovery piece in life in general. Um, if you can do life happy, you can do business happy.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And I really think that to do business happy, you really need to do life happy. They're linked together, right? They're
Yep.
inseparable, because as an entrepreneur, there's really no.
You're doing business first thing in the morning and you're doing business late at night. It just is.
Exactly.
Yep.
You know, I don't like to use the word work-life balance. If anything, I would say I like to call it work-life harmony.
Mm-hmm.
You need, we to find a way that works best for you, where you can stay true to your values, is what I'm going to say. There's no shoulds, because I think that's the problem. We think we should do this. We
Mm-hmm.
should do, then we're back exactly where we started.
Mm-hmm.
So, what is important to you and how can you meet your values? And I was able to pick that up, and I started by helping people with workshops, and it's kind of grown from there. So
Wonderful.
I've learned a tremendous amount about myself and what I am capable.
Mm-hmm. And when I think about the way you put your workshops together and the way you run your business, I mean, you are a scientist, so you are an attention detail person. So you've well thought through each piece that you bring into your programming, um, and knowing too the tools that how they worked for you. So to be able to recognize in other people that tool will work for you in this capacity because of what you recognize and see.
I think that that's one of the biggest pieces
Mm-hmm.
that that helps me, and um, as I'm helping other business owners, is I have that personal development piece. Um, and once you've gone through that, it's so easy to see in other people
Mm-hmm.
that you can help in ways that maybe someone who hasn't had that experience can.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly. So where do you think your skills are heading in your future? What's new on the horizon for you?
I I I love working with groups, and I love, so I have do life happy, I do business happy, and right now they're kind of separate entities.
Hmm.
And I think that there's a real need to bring some of the stuff that I do over here, over here. So some of the stuff, the tools that we use and do life happy, over to entrepreneurship and apply it over there.
Hmm.
Because I
Yeah.
think, like we said at the beginning, if you're not happy, that's going to be reflected in your business. But if you are happy, your business is going to thrive.
Hmm.
I mean, there's other things involved too, but you're going to have a much better chance. It
Hmm.
shows up. It shows up in how you show up.
Hmm. Exactly. Yeah. And how you cultivate that, like you said, that harmony, because entrepreneurs, it really is about how you weave in and out of what is personal with what is business, and sometimes it's just always blurred. But you have that capacity to find the joy in all those little tasks and all the things that are business related because you have to do them anyway. So,
Right. I mean,
yeah.
even just adding, gratitude or a few mindfulness practices to your day can make your day so much better, less
Hmm.
stressful. I'm really big on, as are you, setting that intention. What do you want to accomplish?
Hmm.
And that's not how we've been taught to do things.
Hmm.
So not everybody knows how that can change, make such a big difference.
And I just know for myself, I kind of weave in and out. I mean, I'm using my tools all day long,
Mhm.
which I absolutely love because, like you, once you find the tools, then it's like you would not live without them.
Right.
Everything you do, it revolves around the tools. But I can cultivate the perfect day. But sometimes I don't choose to because somehow I get wrapped up in that linear thing of the tasks and the to-do list. But when I actually stop and do what I would like to cultivate as my perfect day,
Mhm.
oh, the experience of the day is an embodied living rather than a to do, get the jobs done, tick the
And,
boxes at the end of the day kind of thing.
and it is so different.
Hmm.
If I have practices that I do on the days I don't do those, I can absolutely tell a difference.
Hmm.
Um, I had a thought, but I lost it. What I was going to say about not pushing and just doing and allowing
Hmm.
and taking that time. You will be far more creative. Uh, like I found that for myself. Um, Pushing yourself, pushing through, efforting is in the end not the answer. And
Hmm.
but I think it takes living that to figure that out.
I had someone this morning actually that is noticing the stress in his body. And so
Mhm.
he's been adding devices. So, a guard for his jaw at night, orthotics for his feet. I'm not saying these are bad things to have. It was
Mhm.
just that the stress levels ramping up. So he's putting these band aid pieces on. Um, and then he was commenting about how he was having trouble breathing when he was going out for long walks. And he said,
Mhm.
I really like to push it. So I really, really get that really good workout. And I was looking at him and I was thinking, but it's your body's telling you that's not what it needs at the moment. And he said,
Mhm.
I know, but I've got to push through that. And I was like, well, there's the reason why you need all of these apparatuses to try to support the foundation that's crumbling because you
Right.
have this desire to keep pushing at it, thinking that if you push harder, it's going to eventually catch and it's going to be right. And in Tai Chi, we have the phrase "less is more," and you can look at someone doing Tai Chi and you think they have no idea what they're doing because the moves don't look anything like they're supposed to look. And then you find out they're actually one of the masters. And it's because they know how to move from the inside so fluidly, it doesn't need
Mhm.
to look like everybody else on the outside. Um, which is, if you're looking at business and you're looking at a personal life, how you move through that can
Mhm.
really change what your business can appear like and the amount of effort required to have it appear that way.
Exactly. Just what you have on your mind and the energy that you're consuming, um, to hold all of that was
Mm-hmm.
one of the biggest things that I found in my business, um, just through journaling, right? I'm an idea person. I have tons of ideas. I always in my head, and taking the time to write those down to free up space so that I can do the things. Because yes, there are things in our businesses that we don't necessarily want, that aren't our favorite things to do.
Mm-hmm.
But if we approach them from a different perspective, we can at least get them done.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And when we're centered and we're happy, that's what we project. And uh, that attracts people, and that will help you build your business because people will see that and will want to be around that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Can you share how people can find you?
Yes, dolifehappy.com.
Nice and simple.
Yeah. Or to email Angela O'Brien at dolifehappy.com, but either place.
Beautiful. Awesome. And before we close, do you have a favorite movement activity that you like to enjoy?
It's actually one of the ones that I learned from you. I think we did it anyway in your for you, where we do and it's almost for me like a power
Mm-hmm.
stance too, but it's where we do our arms around the room. What did
Mm-hmm.
we do? Um, and fill your space, and the space, for me anyway, the space I take up in the room,
Mm-hmm.
what and being able to fill and send my energy out
Mm-hmm.
into the world,
Mm-hmm.
from that power stance is is one of my favorite things to do. I think um in the morning, like mirror work people do,
Mm-hmm.
um just taking a minute to do that is really helpful. I'll be honest, I don't do a lot of exercise or anything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that movement does, it's intentional,
Mm-hmm.
and uh and what I'm doing while I'm doing it, I think, is why I find it helpful, and it feels good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting too to describe to people about actually fill up the space around you, um, because when you're approaching people, if they've got their back to you, they know when you approach to a certain point, they'll turn around because they recognize something's changed. And so they turn around to discover, oh, you're standing back there. And that's you arriving ahead of your physical body. That's the presence of you. And so to think about, what do you want that presence to vibrate at? How do you want it to color the
Exactly.
room and invite people in? Yeah. Yeah.
And that's also something, in workshops, to take it back to workshops, the how you present yourself and the energy that you set for your participants.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
and even if you want to take it just on a smaller level, is thinking about that every day. If everyone thought about what they were putting out into the world every day, think about what the world could be.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Um, for me, I was thinking about a phrase from Tai Chi that I've actually had to say several times this week, and it's if you smile, your hips will open. And so we would always chuckle about that in Tai Chi because as you're working through de-stressing the body and you're opening up and gaining more length, and
Mhm.
we refer to it as flexibility, but really it's about the length and the openness. When you smile, it allows all of the hinge joints to completely relax. So I was thinking about that as thinking about happiness. So as soon as you smile, you have this immediate relaxation that goes on. And from the perspective of movement, especially if you're doing a lot of time sitting, the hips have the opportunity to open and release tension that you may be holding because of the postures you're holding. So I would just invite people to think about that. And and then there's the second part, which is an exercise we do in our Raising Bioenergetic Awareness course that I have co-authored with Natasha Polomsky. And that is if you think an unhappy thought and then try to stand up and then notice what it feels like and then sit back down and notice the effort it takes to get to the chair, which likely will be you'll plop back into the chair rather than sit down into the chair. And then the second time, if you bring in the happy thought, and again, you've got that idea of happy is going to open that smile on your face, it's going to open the jaw, then rise up and see how that feels. And then allow yourself to sit back down. And it's a completely different experience. So for those people that maybe can't get out of bed, they're stuck. They're at that place of they've listened to us and they're thinking, what's going to be my catalyst for me to change? What's going to allow me to move forward or make the changes that are necessary? It might be as simple as that. And if
Mhm.
you've filled up your space, like you suggested, fill up your space first, let the happiness go, and then step up out of your chair. Wow, now that's an experience. That's not
Yeah.
just sit down on the chair. Yeah, yeah. Um, Beautiful. Okay, I think we've shared a lot for our audience, got them thinking, and inviting them to start to think differently. And I thank you so much for sharing your story and being vulnerable with it so that other people can learn and grow and not get to the place where you got to, but to stop short of that and to be able to know that there's help. So thank you
There
so
is.
much, Angela. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else you want to add before we close?
I think it would be that, you know,
There's help.
that there's help, and you don't have to get there. That doesn't have to be the
Hmm.
driver of change.
And the other piece I'm just thinking about is, which is part of your story, was it took you a long time to find the right tool. So just
Exactly.
because you haven't found the right tool doesn't mean there isn't a right tool for you. It just means you might be looking in the wrong direction.
Right.
And
Mm-hmm.
so to think about what other directions might you be able to go. And like you said, going from a science background and moving over to spirituality, that was a big leap of faith to dive
Mm-hmm.
in something completely different. But because you did, you found a whole world that you didn't know
Yeah.
existed.
That I didn't know existed.
Yeah, yeah,
There.
fascinating. Thank you so much, Angela.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle.
Season 3, we're devoting to the transformational process that happens when people reach into their authentic selves and create magic. Our season has several publications this year, and we're hoping they inspire and empower you to consider living your true heart's desire with love and compassion for others at the forefront. Thank you for joining us. This is Be Well with Dr. Michelle Greenwell, and we wish you well-being. Take care.